Welcome to Illuminati Silver. We tell you the truth about silver. Today is Sunday, the 20th of April, 2025, and we're providing our regular weekly update for the week ending the 18th. First of all, we wish to take this opportunity to wish every Christian a happy Easter and hope that you can enjoy this brief holiday period with family and friends. It seems to be almost every week that we say gold has reached an all-time high, and this past week is no exception. But will it run out of steam, though? And will silver now begin to take the lead? Well, to find out, let's take a look. Okay, so last week gold rose $92, rising from $3,240 to $3,332, having been as high as $3,369 and as low as $3,194, a rise of 2.8%. Gold spread between high and low was $175. Last week we predicted gold would trade between 3,125 and 3,350, and it briefly exceeded our upper limit by just $19. That's Wednesday moving into Thursday, but closed comfortably within our upper range. In sterling terms, gold rose £29, closing at £2,510, and in euros, it rose €74, closing at €2,930. Silver rose 50 cents, rising from $32.29 to $32.79, having been as high as $33.20 and as low as $31.84, which it achieved on Monday, but then rose since. An overall rise of 1.6%. The difference between its high and low was $1.36. Quite modest recently for silver. Last week we predicted silver would trade between $30.50 and $33.50, and this is exactly what happened. Now in sterling terms, silver fell 13 pence, closing at £24.61, and in euros it closed at 28.74 euros. That's up 0.26 euros. Gold to silver ratio rose from 100.3 to 1 to 101.6 to 1. Now before we advance further, please consider giving this video a thumbs up and subscribe. During these turbulent times we really need to reach more people, as there are likely to be some extremely wide swings ahead, and we suspect in a couple of weeks' time. Bitcoin is currently standing at $84,500. That's up $1,100 since last week. Now, US equities were lower. Dow Jones down 1,070 at 39,142. S&P 500 down 81 at 5282. And the Nasdaq Composite down 438 at 16,286. The FTSE 100 index, though, was up 311 points at 8,275. Oils were higher, so we're not going to see $50 oil. Brent crude closed at $67.96, that's up $3.20, and WTI crude closed at $64.68, that's up $3.18. The dollar index closed down 0.9 of a point, almost 1 full point, at 99.2. Now, looking at the economic data last week, the only notable move was the rise in retail sales for March, which rose from 0.2% to 1.4%. We had a number of Fed officials speaking, and the general consensus was that Trump's tariffs have caused uncertainty, plus has caused the likelihood of a short-term rise in inflation. Jerome Powell hinted that the US may not expect interest rate cuts until later in the year, if they do occur, and so it looks as if the much-expected cut in June may not now happen, though we have a further comment on interest rates to make later in this video. But we still have time before they have to make that definitive decision. Now, this coming week, there's also not a lot to shout home about either. We have US leading economic indicators on Monday, new home sales on Wednesday, and consumer sentiment figures on Friday. So once again, geopolitics is likely to dominate what the markets do yet again, as opposed to specific financial announcements. The exception, obviously, though, being tariffs and the tit-for-tat reaction the introduction of such tariffs has incurred, especially with China. So, gold surged again to a new record high, closing not much lower from that high. Technical analysts believe that the candlestick pattern remains bullish, and looking at the rise towards the end of the week after a small dip, it's difficult to argue with that point. $3,383 is the next target price analysts are forecasting to the upside, though some are quoting a potentially temporary correction to as low as 3,246. Either is equally as possible. The continuing weakening of the US dollar is contributing to the rise in precious metals, and it must be noted that silver lagged gold this past week, and until there is certainty around the economy, it may continue to do so for a little while yet. That said, silver has to some degree been spared the significant rise in tariffs between China and the United States. In addition, Trump is putting pressure on Jerome Powell, the Fed chair, to reduce interest rates. And if he does succeed, then precious metals will undoubtedly move higher, with silver being a major beneficiary. If one were to take a 6-month view, then silver has now potentially more upside in percentage terms than gold. One, because a rate cut potential and dollar pressure support upside for all metals. Two, institutional uncertainty drives safe haven demand. But the key thing for silver is that its gold to silver ratio points to relative undervaluation. Whilst we've never been proponents that the gold to silver ratio will ever fall back to 13 or 15 as many pumpers claim, we have often said that 60, 70, 80 is a reasonable area. Well, we're over 100, and that will eventually have to correct itself. Now, although the US economic news next week is limited and we have an Easter break, precious metals should continue their ascent, though the week after, with inflation data being announced, may very well affect markets in either direction. So our forecast for gold ranges from $3,275 to $3,375, with 3,250 and 3,400 as outliers. Silver we expect to trade between $31.75 and $33.75, with $31.50 to $34.50 as outliers, just in case it does catch up. But what do you think? Please do share your thoughts. Meanwhile, thank you so much for listening. We would appreciate it if you'd give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, press the bell sign. Have a wonderful Easter break, and let's look forward to a prosperous and perhaps exciting, if not 1 week, but then certainly 2 weeks ahead.